and would give a lovely structured bag. We need lining fabric as well. We need outer fabric which goes in between the faux leather. We then need something that I've already made. We need a whole width of fabric for making our bag handles. Let's just bring them up just a little bit. There we go. So bag handles here. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, there's a few more people coming now. We need little bits of faux leather for tabs, which I have made a few here. So we need 4 rectangular D-rings, and I've made some already, but we need little pieces like this for our tabs. And also, which I thought about this, a little bit of bias binding. Doesn't matter what colour it is, but I've got some bias binding, and that is going to help with our tabs. So that is about all that we need. Okay. Oh no, I've got these bits here, haven't I? Of course. So the other things we need are our piece 4. So this piece is for the, let's just go up a little bit more because, there we go. Here we go. So we've got, this is the base or the main bit at the bottom. So you need faux leather there. We need 2 pieces for our top bands at the top of the bag. And this is what is going to form part of the base. Oh, here we are. There we are. This is going to form part of the base, as well as a little bit of, it's like pelmet filing, but it isn't. This is bag stiffener. Haven't used it enough. I have got absolutely loads of it and I must use it more. But this is what helps to give a lovely firm base. So I've got a little bit of that. And I'm also using double-sided tape because I've seen others, some Japanese or Chinese ladies or whatever nationality, and they quite often use double-sided tape. So I've got a strong double-sided tape, and this is going to help me put little bits together. Now, you're only going to put this tape, it's like paper crafting tape or even carpet tape, I think it is, but you're not going to put this anywhere near where you're going to be stitching. Okay, so let's go over for a moment to the table. And I'm just going to walk us across here, over to the cutting table, past the ironing board, and onto our cutting mat. Okay, so the first thing we are going to need to do, oh, I have a pen. So this is going to be the base. So this is going to sit like that. That's the long. So this is the long edge here. And it is 9 inches wide. So we need to draw a line at 4.5 inches, which is what I'm doing now. So 4.5, I'm just going to, this is not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter what sort of pen you're using. Just making sure, be better with the long ruler. So I've drawn 4.5 inch mark there. Now what I'm going to do at each end, I'm going to, with the 1.5 inch mark, I'm going to align that. No, that's 1. So I'm aligning the 1.5 here on the line. So 1.5 this way, 1.5 this way. So what we're making is that I'm going to draw along here. We're doing a 3 inch long rectangle and then 1.5 inches down there. So instead of turning the rule around, if I move that up to there and I've got 3 inches on my edge, I know that is the right place to draw. So I've drawn myself a 3 inch by 1.5 inch rectangle there, and I'm going to do the same at this end too. So 1.5 on that line and 3 here, draw along there, down that edge, and as I say, if I line that 3 up on the edge there, I know that that is perfect. So I've drawn myself, I must have done that, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just going to measure across here, and that's 9. So that is fine too. So I'm going to now just cut out this piece. So absolutely on the line. And then along here. I wouldn't use a rotary cutter because the rotary cutter will go a little bit further than you want and cut into the faux leather. And then that is actually going to show on the outside because, as you know, faux leather doesn't fray. So we've got no seams to have to make to cover up raw edges. So let's just go across here. Okay. Right, so we've trimmed those, but I'd save those. They could be bag tabs, but I haven't used them as bag tabs. Right, so there is our piece that we're going to use now. So I'm going to go back to the machine because we are now going to go back over here and we are going to start sewing our pieces together. Whoops, let's come down there. So let's put these out of the way for the moment. And all of these little parts that go to making this bag. Oh no, I didn't want to come out over here really. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not going to do any sewing yet. Let's go back again because we need to do this bottom base. So bear with. Trisha's getting ahead of herself purely because we had that stupid stopping and starting, didn't we? Right, so what we need here is that base piece and our stiffener. So on the back of the stiffener, I'm going to put a little bit of this tape. In fact, I'm going to sit down. There we are. I'm going to put some tape. Let's come down just a little bit on the back here, and I'm going inside. We're going to be stitching. I don't actually think we'll be stitching on here, but oh, there they are. So let's just little bit of, or 2 bits of tape. It just helps everything to be held in place. There we are. So let's just pop that on. So this is going to go onto the back. Now, I think what I'm going to do first of all, and so this is the faux leather piece, which is also going onto the back. And so I'm going to pop this tape here because we will stick both pieces together. And let's put 2. It helps with when we're sewing, and it just makes it completely, there we are, makes it completely, it's going to sit on the top there. It won't move and it will be very, very good. So let's first of all, this is going to go on top of there. Okay, so it's easier to center that onto the back. Oh, you can't see that. Whoops, let's just bring that there. It's easier. It's going to go like this onto our bag. Okay, there it is on there. But it's easier to center this onto the back of the faux leather first of all. So if we pull this off, there we are. There's one piece. That's it. If you're having trouble with faux leather, just burnish it by rubbing something over there. So we've got the exposed double-sided tape, and then I'm going to put this totally centrally. Whoops, that's not centered. There we go. So totally centered on there. So we've got that stuck together beautifully. So now I'm going to take off the tape on the back here because we're going to then place this onto the center here. So we're going to flip that over. And so this is as wide as our opening, but it's in from each of the edges. So halfway, because that is going to be our seam allowance. So let's just, that looks, you can measure if you like, but I've popped that down now. I can see I've got a little gap there, but you can see this long edge lines up with our openings along there. So we will go back now to the sewing machine and we'll do a little bit of stitching. Okay. So now I have, you'll have to see how your machine foot works with faux leather. I have got a Teflon foot on the machine here, and they are more often than not white like this. And boy, does it make it easy. With the Teflon foot as well, let me take it down even further so that you can see. I have made a little black mark just here, so that I've got something to line it up with. This foot actually is gives me a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but sometimes I want 1/8 of an inch. So I've made a little black mark here, and I can line my stitching up with that. So let's just, we'll just go up. It was a little bit close there. So we'll go up just a little bit now. And all I'm going to do is stitch all the way around this edge. Now, with faux leather, make sure do not use the stitch length that comes up when you are starting your sewing. You want to be using a 3 or a 3.5. So 3.5 is what I will be using, because a short stitch length will make it perforate, and if it does stretch in any way, it could easily just pull apart. So, as I say, I'm going to use 3.5. I will be starting, now I'm going to start a little bit further in than the corner. So I'm starting on one of the short edges, and I'm going to stitch fairly slowly as well. Well, not as fast as I usually do. And I'm holding my finger near, oops, well, it would be good if it's stitched at all, wouldn't it? Don't say. That's what we don't want to do, actually. I suppose I've been sewing so much. Yep, and I've run out of bobbin thread. Absolutely rubbish. Okay. So Trisha's done it again. I didn't check. So what I was going to say, what we don't want to do really is to stitch twice over a seam. Whoops, that's the wrong way, isn't it? So, okay, I have stitched twice there. It was the wrong thing to do, but I'm sure we're going to be okay. Okay. Right, just let that run while, oh, I've got a little pair of scissors there, that's good. I've been wanting a little pair of scissors all this time. And I suppose later on I managed to find some brown Orifil thread, because I think on this occasion it is really good to use a nice coordinating thread. There we go. Okay, that's come off. Clip that and pop that there. Now where have I put that? There I have. Right. And pull my thread in there. Oh, okay. There's nothing like, yep, that's what happens as well. If your bobbin won't go in afterwards, it's because your thread is attached around that little spool in there. I've done it before and I'm sure I will do it again. Okay, let's just see if we can bring that thread up. There we are. Right, got the thread up now. Let's start again. Okay, so I'll cut that thread shortly and we can hopefully carry on stitching, which is what we wanted to do. What you don't want to do is be able to, or to stitch the same area. That is much better over and over again. So I hold my fingers down because there's a slight ridge because of that bag stiffener we put in at the bottom. It just means that there's a little bit of a lip. So if you just hold your fingers down on the faux leather, and that's where the tape, the double-sided tape, really helps to keep the faux leather in place and not shift or stretch. Okay, so with my little mark, it's helping me to get a lovely straight, consistent line just inside the edge of the faux leather. And as I say, it's also, there we are, just make sure one more little stitch there, and then we'll come and meet, slight off, but I'll meet the first 2 stitches and we'll trim that there. Okay, so cut that off, and that extra long piece at the back, and my 2 little threads there. So that, I feel, looks really, really impressive. And as you can see, normally faux leather would bend, and look at that, that is lovely and stable. Right, so we've done that bit, that's the little bit, and I feel that you could do any bags, take this on board and do that for a lot of the bags that you will be making in the future. So the next thing we're going to do, actually the instructions didn't go this way, but I am going to, no, the instructions went, we won't deal with that bit now. What we'll do first of all, we will put our faux leather strips onto, so this is the fabric part here. Let me just show you this bag again. So what we're working with now is this part here, and we're going to add this top band. Right, so right sides together, line that top edge like so, and again, so this isn't top stitching, this is just stitching. So I would stitch with a 3 here, and you can see you won't have any problem with stitching the faux leather to fabric when you're stitching on the knit fabric side. It's just smooth, you've got fabric on the bottom, and you have the knit side of your faux leather on the top. Now I don't actually reverse there because I don't want to stop the, I don't want to stitch through the faux leather too often. Now I'm going to, the first bag I made, what I tried to do was fold that seam allowance under the faux leather. But it is quite hard, it's a bit time consuming, it can be done, and that's what I did. But on the second bag and this one, it is easier to let the faux leather go the way it wants to. And what we'll do is top stitch on our fabric, because we do need to top stitch, or you can leave it all till the very end when we have our wadding under there. We will leave the faux leather top stitching until we've got a wadding under there, and then it's holding all the layers together as well. Okay, so I'm just pulling that apart so that my seam allowance is fully opened, and then I've got top stitching to the left on the fabric. So we're going to do that again with our other piece here. So again, let's line that up, and a little bit of plastic on, or sticky tape on the back of there. So we're stitching with a 3. Now the other thing I should say, don't use pins to hold this together. Pins will make holes in your faux leather, which I must admit, I think there is a way of getting pinholes out by giving a little bit of steam or heat from an iron, not pressing directly, but just a little bit of steam to warm it up. But it's much better to use your clips. So just flip that back, push the fabric away, and we're going to top stitch along here. Much better to use clips and then you don't get holes in there. Is Trisha using a leather needle? No, I didn't say that, Nikki. I am using just a bog standard 80-12 needle, what I use for my fabric sewing. A leather needle is the wrong thing to use on faux leather, because the tip of a leather needle is actually, it's very hard to see, but it's not a point like your universal needles are. They have a pointed tip. A leather needle has got a chisel tip. So I'm not saying it's an inch chisel, but it is actually a slice. So it actually cuts into the faux leather, where leather, you do need to use a leather needle. This is faux leather, and you just use your bog standard needle, universal, because it is the point that you need. So you're fine there. Okay, the next thing, so we've got the top and the bottom. So this is the top edge. Here's our fabric. What we can do now, no, before we do now, we'll make our tab, because we'll put our tabs at both ends first before we put the base together. So our tabs, little bit 1 inch wide, because I'm using 1 inch bag hardware, 1 inch wide. Now my first ones, I didn't do this, but thinking, and I thought, oh, I wanted to strengthen, because I haven't used a double piece of faux leather or folded faux leather to stitch, but I thought, just to make it a little bit stronger, let's pop it onto a piece of bias binding. Doesn't matter what the colour is, because it's going to be folded and inside, but I've got a bit of cream there. So the folded edge is up against the wrong side of the faux leather, and this is going to give it strength. So again, I'm just going to top stitch along the edge here, like so. And you can do all four one after the other if you want to. And let's see here. So we'll just stitch along here. And there is our, so I've got 3 already done. I didn't put that on very straight, did I? But just trim those extra bits off along with your little bits of fabric. And I'm even going to trim that little bit off, because it won't matter. So I'm then, oh, there's a little bit there as well with a bit of thread. Just trim that off. It's all going to be hidden in the seam anyway. And then with your rectangular D-ring, there is the join. So I'm going to actually slot that in there over the join. So all you've got, not that you'll see this either, but that's a solid piece there. So having aligned those short raw edges, I'm also going to pop this under. I'm going to stitch just across here between those stitch lines, just to hold it together. Because otherwise you'll know from previous, it will shift, and the D-ring actually drops down if you haven't got that row of stitching. So no reversing, just clip those little bits of fabric there, thread I mean, and there we have a nice neat tab. So while we're on this bit now, here is our top band. So we're going to put our tab, and I'm going to put them 3 inches in from the side. So I am going to make a little mark. Have I got a ruler? Yes, I have got a ruler. So 3 inches in from each end. 1, 2, 3. And if I make just a little mark just there, because it's not going to be seen, and a little mark here, whoops, 1, 2, 3, and we'll do exactly the same with our other piece, our other top band. So 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got our little marks there ready for our tabs. And again, I'm just going to place that just there, and I'll just put, just temporarily, we'll put a little clip on there, and we'll put this one on here, And we'll put a little clip on there. And then whilst we've got them in place, I'm just going to stitch across here. It is probably 1/8 of an inch from the edge, but we want it to go into the seam allowance. So again there, just make sure that's straight. And we can stitch across there. So there's our first two. Just cut that bit of thread. And, oh, that one's gone. And here is our second piece here. So again, a tab. Just pop that. So when I say 3 inches in, I've got the edge of the tab. So there is a 3-inch space there. And there is a 3-inch space here from the side to the middle. Okay, so again we can just take that off and we can stitch across there, and we'll move to the next one and stitch across there. So if you were stitching the seam, you wouldn't be able to have the tabs, the clips still on, because they'd get in the way, but that is fine. So that now they are both anchored. So what we need to do now, these two pieces are going to go, because we will go back to the cutting table in a minute, but what we've got is our centerpiece here. So here is our center, and we need to join this piece or this edge here onto here, and then the same, we want to join this edge along here, and here's our tabs at the other end. So while we're here, it'd be quite easy just to place this right sides together onto this long edge here. So it is also a good idea, it is a long edge, so I'll put the odd clip on there as well. And we will start here. So again, stitch length at about 3, and we can stitch 1/4 of an inch across here. Okay, holding that together. So this time I've got the fabric on the top and I've got the faux leather on the bottom, but it's the knitted side, so it is working really well. So then we can open that out, and again, the fabric's this way, the faux leather seam is under here, so I'm going to top stitch along here. So where do I want, there we are. So I've got a little mark on the other side so that I can get a nice straight row of stitching there. And I've also made sure my top stitching is 3.5 as well. So I'm basically doing the bag stitching with 3 stitch length and 3.5 for my top stitching. So this is going through a layer of faux leather as well as fabric. So it's looking nice and neat. So now I'm going to get my other piece here, which the top is here, but I want to put this edge onto this edge here. So flip that over and bring that around like so. And if I line up this end first of all, because it will match, because it is cut to size. Okay, so clip. Let's put a clip down here. Whoops. Pop that on, and then we can line up at the other end. Lovely, and pop it under our needle and do our 1/4 inch seam with our 3 stitch length. Okay, and it just, you can put as many clips as you like along this edge, but it does sit together really nicely and it doesn't move. It's because we're using cotton. It's the right side of the faux leather that it's sticking to, and it works really well. Okay, so now we can open this out and we can top stitch on the fabric along here. So again, just line that up, increase the stitch length to 3.5, and I'm just holding that taut just here. I'm just holding that taut, just pulling it away. Fill that in a little bit further, that's it. Just pulling it away so that I've got no pleated fabric underneath there. It's all opened out and exactly as I want it to be. There we are, just make sure everything. And I'm watching my little mark on the foot lining up with that seam line where the faux leather meets the fabric. I've gone off a little bit there, but you can't see it so much on the patterned fabric. Okay, what we need to do now is our, a little bit close. I don't know why that was happening. Right, so now we need to go over to the table because we need to get our faux leather on here. So let's just pick that up and we can go over here. I think the light is fading a little bit. So there is our piece. Let's come up just a little bit more. And we need our, so let's take that out of the way. We need our piece of, there is that, that's better, we have light. So I've got the whole piece there. Let's take those out of the way. And we're going to use that as a template for, here we are. So here is, we're going to use this piece as a template for our, to pop our wadding on. So I'm going to move that out of the way and pop my wadding down on the table. And then, I know I've cut this roughly to size, but in the kits it'll be the right width because there's no reason why the width should be any different, but the length of it is a little bit longer than you need because, there we are, it may be that your stitching is not quite a 1/4 inch seams, and there we are. So let's just move that along there. So all we're going to do now with our rotary cutter is we're going to trim along here. So just make sure it's all smoothed out. We've got no lumpy bumpy bits, just like you are putting wadding to the back of a quilt. And we can just use this as a template to go along there. Now I'm just going to do a little bit across there, nowhere near to the edges because I don't want it to cut into my faux leather. So we can go along there. So we want to cut these little rectangles out like that. And let's cut from here. And it doesn't matter if it's a tiny little bit more, but if it were at home, I'm sure you will be going around the table just to cut this out perfectly. Okay, so we take that bit out of the way. We've got our wadding all the way around. Now, what I feel is a really good idea to use is, and I've been losing this all day long, 505 fabric spray. It is a godsend. And it would be a godsend if it hadn't disappeared. Oh, I know, I popped it in a bag, didn't I? Let's have a look. It's in one of my bags. Okay, here it is. So 505 fabric spray. Now we know, since we've cut the wadding to size, we know we can very carefully, because we don't want it to go onto our cutting mat, we can pull that back and just smooth that out just as if it were a quilt. Okay, so that's all gone down to there. And then we can lift this end up underneath our bottom, there we go. Just give that a spray. And this will hold it all beautifully together. So just flatten that down. Everything should fit back to where we trimmed it around, and smooth that out from the center out to the edges. And Bob's your uncle, it's all in place. Now, at this point now, I'm going to take it back to the machine and I'm going to stitch on the faux leather. So we shall go on this bit here, on this bit, and on there for the top stitching, purely because that is going to hold it all together, the wadding to the faux leather front. Now, while I'm here, rather than keep coming backwards and forwards, what I'm also going to do, I'm going to cut the lining piece. So again, I'm using this as a template. So let's put our lining fabric down like so. And again, it will be a little bit longer than needed. And then we can put our fabric down. So at home, you would probably have done this stitching first of all. So I would then put this right sides together. But as it happens, I'm just going to line that up. Let's just pull that fabric. There we go. So let's just line that up. And we will cut our template. We'll use this and we'll do exactly what we did with the wadding. And we can cut along the top there. And we will cut these pieces out as well. And then we've got our lining piece exactly ready to go. So let's take that out of the way. We can just cut into that little rectangle. So basically you don't need a pattern piece because you're using your work as you go along as your template. So anything which is slightly different to what a pattern piece would be, and say perhaps not fit together as you want it to, it won't happen with this because you're using your own measurements, whatever yours has come out to. You've got a template to make the lining fit. Okay, so we can now go over to the machine and we'll just do that little bit of top stitching, and then we can put the lining together. Okay, so we'll take our lining away for the time being. There we go. So we can roll that up like it were a quilt. And all I'm going to do, as I say, is some top stitching along here. So make sure the setting is up to 3.5 for the stitch length. And that is going there. Don't use too much 505 spray because, there we are, the 505 spray actually comes through a little bit. Okay, let's just put that stitch under there. And as I say, we're doing a longer stitch length because this part of it does look really nice, the top stitching on the faux leather. So if you can keep it as consistently straight and parallel to your seam line, it will look lovely. Okay, so there's one bit of top stitching. And then we'll do this side here, and you'll notice that because you'll see the line of top stitching we've done on the fabric, but this helps to keep your wadding together with the faux leather as well. So it's dual purpose, as well as looking professional. It is actually doing a job as well. Okay, so there is that side. And then let's just fold that over. And then we're going to top stitch along the edge of this seam here as well. So line that mark on my foot up. And so our 505 spray is also keeping all the layers together beautifully. And as you saw, that double-sided tape is really keeping that in place, the base. Okay, so last little bit of top stitching along this edge, just across here. Okay. So I don't think you found anything too difficult so far, have you? Right, so we have, excuse me. Right, we have our whole piece here. I'm now going to take my lining fabric and place that right sides together down onto our outer piece. So what we can do is just fold that over, because this will fit because we've cut it to the size of our outer piece. And all we're going to do now is pop that under there, bring that over, and we are going to line up the top edge. So the lining fabric is going to line up with the top edge here. And we're just going to stitch this edge and the bottom edge. So let's just move that over. In fact, what we'll do is we will pop a few clips along here, because again, it is quite a long edge. So let's just make sure that is all lined up, and we'll put a clip on there. So starting from one end, just make sure that doesn't line up very well. There we are. So we're lined up now, and we're down to a 3 stitch length again, and we're going to stitch across here. Now this time we are using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it is going to mean that our tab stitching is enclosed in that seam. So all I'm doing is making sure these edges keep aligned, and we can take that off now and just line that up there. Oh, just make sure, you see how that D-ring had folded itself upwards? The last thing you want to do is try and stitch over a D-ring. Okay, so we are done at one end, so we can slide that around and take all those little bits off. We are now working on this other edge, and we'll put the other edge of the lining right sides together. Just open those out and line this bit up just here with the faux leather. The wadding might splay just a little bit, so don't work to the wadding, work to the faux leather. And then we can line up at this other side here. Make sure that is perfectly aligned, and under the needle again. So there we are. So on we go. 1/4 inch across here. All fits beautifully. Don't you just love it when everything goes swimmingly? Apart from when Facebook decides it's going to stop your live video. Okay. So we've got both those ends done. So I am going to take us over here again. When we're working with a big bag, this is the problem when you're confined to a small space. It's not easy to show everything under there. So here it is, like that. And what we're going to do now, we've got the top done. We're going to pull this apart, and we're going to make the lining go over the lining, like there. So we've got the outer over the outer, lining over the lining. Now, without a shadow of a doubt here, I will be using clips. So we want to make sure this part here is the top edge of the bag. So you want to make sure that that lines up beautifully, which it does. We want to make sure that that does too. That will happen as it happens. And then this part here, which is near the base, you can see how rigid that is, which is lovely. And we're going to make sure those two line up as well. That is really important. So we can, let's put our clip on there. And then I'll go to the other side here because we want to line that up also. So let's just have a look, line that up perfectly. And it should, of course, once you've got that clip on there, that should fit perfectly anyway, which it does. So we'll just go to this top edge here. Just make sure that is perfectly aligned. And as I say, this other one just here should automatically line up. Yeah, that does. That automatically aligns as well. So what we're going to do, having got that all clipped, we will be leaving in the lining edge, we're going to leave a large gap down here. We're going to stitch along the other side, the whole way up the lining, all the way down to this bottom here. And on this side, we've left the gap, but we're stitching all the way down here as well. So let us go back and do some stitching because that will be practically the last bit of stitching we do. Okay, so what might be a really good idea, not that I put this in the instructions, I've just said you stitch the whole way along. Let's start at this top edge, okay, and we know that that is lined up beautifully. So let's start there, and I'll start on the faux leather with the longer stitch length, but when I come down here onto our fabric, I'm going to put it down to a 2.2. So this side I'm going to leave an opening. Right, nice big opening. And line us up at the bottom edge and then leave a big, big gap. Big, big gap. There we are. And reverse. And I will reverse at the bottom. Okay, and what I'm going to do is the same with the other side. So you can stitch the whole way along, so over the faux leather and over the cotton fabric, but I just think when I keep chopping and changing with my stitch length, it is easier to start, and it also makes sure that that faux leather edge is perfectly, I'm hoping that will be really well aligned. So down here, this second side of the lining, we're just going to stitch the whole way down. Okay. And then, whoops. That is wrong. What on earth have I done there? Ugh. I can't have cut that very well. That one's okay. What have I done here? Oh, I've got to stretch that. Oh, bear with, bear with. This is where I should have popped some clips there, shouldn't I? Right, let's just rip this open. Rip this open with the seam ripper. So the little ball inside. So the ball is going, you probably can't see me doing that. Okay. That's, I don't know what is going on there. Don't usually do things like this, Trisha, do we? It must be just one of those days. Okay. So I have got that lined up. So, I think I've just done a bit of stretching, to be honest. Right. Let's just start again. and stitch down here. I've got my finger on it here and reverse there. Okay, all sorted. So down here, I'm going to go back to my 3 stitch length and I'm going to start at this top edge, which we did before. So on the faux leather, I'm looking at making sure that that lines up beautifully. So under we go and straight down. Right, so that is all lining up. 1/4 inch seam allowance again. And you can see how this base is sticking up here, but let's just check that that's lining up. Yes. There we go. So we'll keep that base and straight down to the bottom. And I'm not reversing there either. So that's one side. Flip it over to the other side. And starting on where we stopped stitching. And again, I'm just going to check that this is lined up well just there, because it's an important part. And we will carry on stitching down here. And again, I'm just going to check that this is aligned well. There we go. And then at the bottom. So this part won't flatten because it's nice and rigid there. So we may as well start at this very end, and you can see what needs to happen here, where that cutout is. It's just going to flatten nice and easily. Let's turn it around that way. So that's flattened. Whoops, there we go. And will fit along the base, that cutout there. Now, what I would also suggest is to open out that faux leather seam allowance. So let's just open that out and pop ourselves a clip. So I don't usually do that, but open that out and then we can pop that under the machine. So I've actually got that, the flat bottom is flat because it's on the bottom here. So, and I'm going to reverse a little bit off the center there. I'm just going to use my seam ripper to hold that down and then just flatten it to go. And I'm reversing into the seam allowance. So I'm not going off. Can you see there? I'm not going on the same line that I stitched. I'm going off. And then I'll flip over to this other side and we'll do the same again. I'm just going to pull that out and we're going to flatten that down like that. Open out that seam allowance, and I will put a clip there because it just holds it really, really nicely. So then we'll pop that under the machine again. And I say I'm reversing into the seam allowance rather than on the same part, and then straight across to the other side and reverse back on the seam allowance. So you can see that's gone along there. Right, so round 2, probably the easier part, and just open that. So there is our cutout there. Just open that out, pop your fingers in and flatten it down, and we'll pop that under the needle. And I will reverse there, just making sure that is nice. Just make sure, yeah, that's fine. So we could just trim that little bit away, but the scissors aren't here. So then on this other side, finger in that cutout corner, pull it apart like that, flatten this seam one way or the other, and we can pop that under we'll flatten it that way, but reverse at the beginning. Let's just pull that over just a little bit. And reverse. There. Okay. So we've got our corners all sorted out. So this is why I needed, we needed a big, nice big opening here, because we want to put our hand in here. And if you grab hold of this base and sort of hold the corner, because we don't want to bend that, or we can't, and I'm just pulling it. So I'm pulling the base before anything. Okay, so the base is coming out there. The base is all nice and flat because we've got that large hole. Okay, there we are. So I'm still going to put my hand back in here because I want to make sure that the base is nicely stitched. And what we should see, yep, can you see how we've got that nice, that is our extra fabric, extra faux leather we popped on the bottom. And again here, let's just poke this one out. So that's all nicely stitched. And there is our bottom, you see. There is our base. So we've got that nice side there. That is just there. Similarly there. And I think I'm really pleased with how, and you can see that that's beautifully flat. There's no, I'm sort of squeezing it, and that's beautifully, beautifully flat. Dare we look? We dare. Let's see, I don't know where I put my little scissors. Okay, that meets nicely. Let's see. Oh, that meets nicely. Not quite perfect, but near enough. That meets nicely. And that is too. So it just does help if you do those extra little bits and it goes right first time, even though we've had a few hiccups tonight. So next bit to close this seam here. So what I like to do, I just like to put my finger in, and then I'm turning back about 1/4 inch, running my nail along there, and it just gives it that nice little edge, saves me going to the ironing board. And then the same along the other side here, just fold it in round about 1/4 inch, and if you run your nail along there, it's like we are pressing it. Okay, and if you hold where the seam starts, hold it from there, and then when we pull it together, that is all going to just line up beautifully. So you could put a few clips along there if you want to, just to hold that. I've got a clip there, so just to hold it, and that is going to stitch together really nicely. So we'll take that under. What I've done with my little scissors now. I really ought to have 6 pairs of scissors to my side, and then I should always be able to find one. Okay, so let's just go in with a smaller stitch length as well, either 1.8 or 2, and go nice and close to the edge. So I'm just holding those edges together, and then I'll hold down at the bottom where the seam started. There we go, and we can go right down just a little bit further where the seam is together anyway. Okay. Right, we just want to clip that little bit. That is all open. So now I'm going to pop the lining back into our bag. So we've got our tabs on there, fortunately. Just push my hand right down. Oh, a bit of thread there, we don't like that. Let's just go. Not many comments. Oh, there's Janet, hello. Thank you, Heather. You can't wait to make this one. But it's nice and straightforward, but it's just got those added extras, hasn't it? Okay, so now around this top edge here, I am pulling that lining into the bag so that our top edge is purely faux leather. So I'm just pulling it down in there, and then I'm putting a clip each side of the tabs, and I'm actually going to do one in the middle there as well, because we want this top edge to be really, really nice. Now, the only place where it is a little bit thick is here at this side. So always go a little bit slower over this side edge, because it is chunky. Even with this machine, if you take it slowly, you're fine. Even hand crank it if you wanted to. So let's just pop that in. There we go. And as I say, just put one either side. It's just keeping the top edge, the fabric lining down. Okay, so just push that in. And then it gives your lining on the inside just a really nice finish, because there's nothing worse than the very last bit of top stitching you do and you've got like a pleat, and it's, at the end of the day, it's no big deal really, but it is irritating when you spent time in getting everything else done really well, and then that one last bit, as I say, it's just a little bit annoying. Okay, so I've got those in there. So I'll do the top stitching as well. So the top stitching, I will have to take away the table. So this is where, if you have, whoops, pop that out there. If you have an accessory box, you can take it off and you've got a free arm. This machine hasn't got a free arm, so it's a little bit more difficult. So I try and start near a side edge. I don't start in the middle at the front or the back. Let's start at a side edge and just lay that over there. And let's take off that one first of all. So I am increasing my stitch length to a 3.5 again. And I am going to do a 1/4 inch stitch allowance, seam allowance around here. Oh, there's a few more clips. Okay, so let's see if you can see here. So I'm starting just to the side of the side seam, and there we are. Oh, that didn't go over there too badly at all. So just keep pulling the bag to the back so that you've got a nice straight edge that you're going along. Oh no, you can't see that very well at all. Let's just go in. There we are. That's perhaps a bit better. Okay, so I'm just tucking the edge of the lining under, because I don't really want to see any coming over the top. So fairly slowly, because I do want this edge to look very neat. And I'm using the edge of my foot lined up with the edge of the top of the bag. So let's just take that off as well. Okay, and then I just keep pulling the bag around. Whereas I say, if you've got a free arm, it will move around freely under there, which is really good. Right, so we're coming up to the next little tab here. Okay, so I'm just pulling this. Whoops, that's getting in the way now. Just pull that under there. And I'm coming up to another side. So I say I'm going to go a little bit more slowly, because your stitches may go a little bit shorter. Where it's bulky, it tends to stitch on top of each other a little bit. So it isn't easy to be able to open those seams out. At the bottom, we were able to open the seams out, but not at this top edge. So let's just keep turning that round, and we're nearly the whole way round now. There is, so push that lining seam out of the way so that our top edge is purely faux leather. The faux leather on the website, the colour doesn't look as good as it actually is. So it's a little bit like everything. Photographs don't give a true colour value. The denim photograph was the best I could take, but it wasn't wonderful. So when we get round to where we started, see if you can go into the same holes, the same stitches. Now that's come out quite well. So you can't even tell that I started and stopped just there. And then on the back here, just using my seam ripper to take those threads away. Okay, so we have our bag, but we just need the, we just need our, where's it gone now? We need our handles. So I have already done the handle. The handle, let me just see, I usually grab a piece of fabric, don't I? So let's find a little bit of fabric to show you. Because it may be the first time that anybody has been watching this. Or let's use this bit of fabric. Now it's a little bit big. Right, let's pretend this is 4 inches wide. What we'll do is fold it in half wrong sides together and press. We then open it out and press the raw edge to that centre crease on both sides, press, and then fold it in half and press. That becomes our handle. Now, if you want to put wadding in here, what you can do to make a more rigid handle, open it out once, put your wadding in there. Hang on, let's say, pretend that's a piece of wadding. Pop that in, refold, and then top stitch along both long edges. Okay. So I have already done that here. And I'm going to have to get my scissors because... right. So I'm going to trim off the selvage edge and a little bit there. And then I'm going to fold this in half, fold it in half and cut it. So there is my middle. Give that a little cut. Sometimes it doesn't cut it that straight when you fold it. Okay. So what we're going to do now, and this is really the easy bit. So working one at a time, I'm going to thread this end into the D-ring. Okay, so it's there. I'm going to fold this back about 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold that on top. So I've folded it back 1/2 inch, fold that on top. Now it's only 1 inch long. I don't actually find the need to pin that or clip it, but if you want to, you can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch across here. So I'm just holding that down and I'm going to stitch across here. So as far as I can, as close as I can to that part of the D-ring. So I'm going to stitch across here in between my rows of stitching. Then I turn it and I do, let's see, 2 or 3, 1, 2 stitches that way. Then I reverse because I don't want to turn the whole of the bag round. So then I've got my reverse and I go right over to the other edge stitching. And then I'm going to turn it this way and I'm going to come 2 stitches down, 2 stitches, and then turn it back and I'm going to stitch across that first row of stitching. Now on this patterned fabric, you can't actually see that well, but I'm just doing a rectangular box. Can you just see that? Not very well. But there is a rectangular box on there. On a plainer fabric, it would show. So then I'm going to take this through my fingers. Can you see? So that I know that has got to go through this next one like that. Fold it back 1/2 inch and then fold the main part back onto it. Just hold that, right, just hold it nice and together. Right, and then just pop that under your needle as well. And as I say, we're going in between the stitch lines. So I'll stitch across there. I don't go right to the edge, and then just pivot that round. Just watch. Oh, so that one went 3, and then pivot it back. No, actually, that's just a bit too much. I'm just going to reverse that one. I didn't want to come that far. Whoops. So it's just gone a little bit more. And then we can reverse across there, just to the stitches at the other side, and then 2 forward or 3, depending on how many stitches you took there, and trim and get that bit of thread out there. Gosh, that still looks neat. That's surprising. So low battery, okay. So I've got the one strap here, and then we're going to do exactly the same on this other side. So I'm going to take my first part, and I tend to put this one on first, through, fold it back 1/2 inch, and onto the top of it, and take it to the machine. It doesn't actually take that long once you're in the flow. So across there, and 1, 2, well, it went 3, okay, and then I reverse. It just saves me taking the whole bag, and then forwards, and then forwards again. So by doing one reverse, it means I don't have to take the whole bag under the machine. 1, 2, 3. And it just makes it very nice, very neat. Okay, so I'm just making sure this is nice and straight. I've got the end here now, and I know that needs to go in that way. Fold it back. Fold the main strap on top, and stitch across. And as I say, if you use the width of your foot here, you know you're in the same place each time. So then let's just pivot round here. 1, 2, and then we will reverse here, just to the stitching. Then we come forward. There we are. And straight across again. Okay. And that's caught that all down. And we've got a fairly neat attached strap. Well, a little bit of a... So we've actually... Oh, we have gone a bit over, haven't we, by about half an hour or so. Thank you, everybody that's still here. But we've got our bag. We've got our bag all finished this evening. Right, so let's just see. We'll come back up. Whoops, not that way. Right. Don't want that. So that's down. That's better. Here we are. Right, and here it is in all its glory. So that's what we have made this evening. And as you can see, we've got that lovely bottom to it. So we've got number 1 we have number 2. So I've called that one filigree. This one's filigree. That one's retro flowers. And this one is poppy heads. So 3 of them. I think if you were selling those, you've got at least £30 bagged there. If you took them to London, you could sell them for 100. Easy peasy, £100. Right, let's just have a look, see if I can see what's going on here. Oh, that's better. Oh, come on. Oh, no, come on. That's it. Comments. Oh, Linda loves it. Sharon loves it. Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah. But as I say, although the bag shape is fairly standard, straightforward, you've got these extra bits which just give it, let's just show you the base there. Don't they just make it look as if it's, well, I wouldn't say shop bought. Yeah, it is different. Yes, it really, really is. Well, it sounds to me as though you've enjoyed. So thank you very, very much. The other thing I did say what I wanted to do was to add a zip across here on the front of the bag, and then to have an outline of faux leather. I have done that many years ago on TV, but not for a long time. So I will do a video. I will bring it to you as well, so that you can do that. But I'm really pleased. You can see here the stitching really sets it off as well, doesn't it? It's that added extra. And it really didn't take too much effort to do that. Okay, well, I think you've had enough of me now. We're still 50 people here, which is lovely. How would the PU be posted? Would it be folded? Yes, but PU with a little bit, so never iron PU. But you can always use the heat or the steam from an iron on the reverse and leave it flat, and it flattens out. So yes, I don't know what other way I could do it. If I didn't fold it, the postage would go up because of its long shape. So there we go. Lots of people have bought it in the past and nobody's ever mentioned that, so I didn't even think about it. It's all about the base and the hood bottom. It is. It's all about the base and a good bottom. Absolutely. What's her name? Trainer. Yes. Okay, so thank you everybody for watching tonight. It has been lovely. Oh my goodness, it's going to be sewing bee soon, isn't it? Aye. Okay, so don't forget, can't remember what channel, BBC One probably, Great British Sewing Bee tonight. And I will see you on Thursday. Mystery Scrappy Quilt Sew Along number 6 to start on Friday. So thanks for joining me and take care of yourselves and bye for now.